So I think we're just going to go to each of the panel members very quickly, just to give their perspective on how they relate to this work, how they relate to the findings, and I suppose anything they found surprising or confirming. And then we'll open up to broader questions. So if I just quickly shoot out to each one of you. So Richard Threlfall, if you can give us your perspective neatly, I suppose, from one KPMG to another.
Ron, thank you very much indeed. I mean, I really do think this is a seminal report, as I think I said on social media when I shared it when it was published, and I'm really proud of the fact that KPMG have been involved with it, and Chelsea and Will, thank you very much for your leadership of it and the presentation this morning. Chelsea, you framed the work at the beginning in the context of the UK's infrastructure challenges, building back better, levelling up, net zero. But these are not just the UK's infrastructure challenges, these are the world's infrastructure challenges. And the thing that I think is really exciting about this report for me is that its applicability, as far as I can see, expands across the whole world. And it sort of takes us back to some fundamentals about what infrastructure and construction is all about. It is about building the foundation of civilization and investing in a country's future. Infrastructure is, as some of you will have picked up before, responsible in some shape or form for the delivery of about 92% of the underlying indicators of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is also the solution to something between 70 and 80% of the world's carbon emissions. So for all of these reasons, I guess everyone around this virtual table understands that infrastructure is sort of fundamentally important. But equally, we all know that our ability to deliver that infrastructure and maintain it and operate it effectively is severely constrained and always has been. The estimates vary, 70, 80 trillion, however much it is. It's a vast sum of money that outstrips the ability of both governments and private investors to bring that money to the table. And COVID has, in particular, hit the ability of developing market governments in particular to make the investments that they had planned. And for all of these reasons, anything that drives greater efficiency in the delivery of construction and infrastructure is the most fundamental route to getting more output for the input that is capable of being put in. You referenced again, Chelsea, the poor productivity record of the industry. Again, it's not just a UK story. I remember a few years ago, the Hong Kong government reckoned that productivity in that territory had actually fallen over the last 20 years because construction has been the last industry to really embrace what is possible in terms of data, information management, and technology more generally. Of course, it was more than 5 years ago now that McKinsey provoked the industry by saying that it was probably spending 40% more than it needed to because of the failure to embrace the role of data in the industry. I prefer to turn the maths of that around. We don't need to spend less on our infrastructure. We need to get more infrastructure out. You turn it round, you make that 40% efficiency. You can deliver 66% more infrastructure for the money that is available. And for me, that is fundamentally what this report is all about. It is, in a sense, a long overdue wake-up call to the importance of embedding information management across the fragmented industry that is the construction supply chain. And I think it's hugely exciting because I hope that it will inspire not just the players within that supply chain, but also government to think more creatively about the way in which they create the structures that really bring information management to the heart of how the industry operates. And ultimately, that means that we will be able to attain the UN Sustainable Development Goals, perhaps not quite so far beyond the 2030 timeframe that's currently envisaged. And it means that we will be able to invest at the rate we need to in order to deliver net zero. And it means that we will be able to drive all the productivity and knock-on GDP benefits that you mentioned, Chelsea, for the benefit of not just the UK, but every country in the world.
Thanks, Richard. That's a rousing start to discussion. Richard Robinson, go and move on to you, please.
Thanks, Ron, and thanks, Richard, for those great points there, and then several of which I'll no doubt echo. And good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be in the presence of so many digital gurus in our industry, looking at many of the names on here. So it really is great to have everyone on. Look, I think there are three key things from the report that really stand out as important to me for the industry as a whole. Firstly, it's a really, really important piece of work. There's almost no data like this currently available on the value of information management to delivery. And I think this has made financial investment cases in digital, in IM, really hard for companies to justify, for companies large and small to justify. Try and get in that past your FD or your CFO if you can't show a returns case. And I think that's no doubt held back investment in digital in the industry. So I think this study will really enable business cases and lead to faster paced investment in IM and digital. And that will drive us forward on digital transformation of the industry. So I think this work's really key for business leaders. You know, and I don't think this is 100% true, but there's a large amount of truth to it. But if it's not real, if you can't point to those efficiencies and those reduced costs in your profit and loss account, in your P&L, then those numbers aren't real. So I think the discipline and rigor that you know, Chelsea certainly took us through there at the start, that's gone into this report, are really important. You know, many previous studies, haven't they, have been quite often at practitioner level, and we might a few years ago might well have been listening to a report like this about the benefits of clash detection in BIM. You know, and those are really, you know, those elements are really important, but I think that didn't really readily translate into pound improvement in productivity. So I'm really pleased that this report's sought to take all of that up a level and see it from a business and industry and global perspective, as Richard outlined. Secondly, the report's based on real-world examples. So the returns case that we've seen, I think, is real. As Will talked about, adoption is going up rapidly. But as you can see from the case studies in the report, even just the 11, and that was brought down from a good 50. But there's quite a variation in how companies are going about adopting digital. I'd encourage you to have a read of the report. I'm sure you have, but there are some really interesting things, aren't there, in how information management enabled rapid deployment of the Nightingale hospitals. Ida Roth, our own business here in Arkins, is a construction company created in a digital environment. We haven't had to do anything to sort of shoehorn a business into a digital environment. We created that business fully digitally enabled, which is already reaping some interesting benefits. And CPS, I think, is a fantastic real world example of operating the country's busiest motorway, and how using information management will really reap benefits for the company running it, will reap benefits for road users, will reap benefits for Highways England. So I think I just really like the real world value creation that we can see in there. Thirdly, the ROI is exceptionally positive. £6 of productivity value created for every £1 in IM. That is a fantastic number. We're not talking about something that's, you know, if you've done business cases for public sector projects before, you'll know those sort of fine margin multiples that we argue about. But 6 to 1 is inarguable, isn't it? Even if we're out by a factor of 2, it's still massively worthwhile doing. And the wider impact, I think, if Chelsea will probably be horrified at my application of economics here, but if you multiply a couple of things together there, you can see a wider impact of a leverage of 20 times, can't you? 20-fold on any investment in information management. You know, and that's the wider business impact from higher order technologies once we've got information management sorted out. You know, and this doesn't surprise me actually in many ways, as I'm sure many companies have done. In Arkins, we implemented IM a number of years ago, and only now have we really been able to enable the higher order solutions like machine learning and AI and the applicability of those, because we started that journey a while ago. And we weren't seeing these numbers a few years ago, I don't think. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, if there's some higher order Moore's law at work, and that we will drive out greater efficiencies when we redo this study in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, that we'll find that leverage in IM was an order of magnitude higher than we even thought. And I think another thing that we weren't seeing a number of, even just 2 or 3 years ago, is the presence in C-suite discussions of information management and digital. That's something we talk about in my exec meetings, every single exec meeting. There are infinite numbers of roles advertised now in information management or projects. And I think that's just a fantastic trend, and it shows that transformation is taking place, and you can see it through many of the things in this report. Look, so what's a key takeaway for me? I think actually overall the government's role in supporting information management is just beginning. I think we made a fantastic start as a country with the BIM mandate back in 2011 with implementation in 16. I think we need to drive forward and make that become the IM mandate. And work that as hard as we can through the country. We've got a great foundation in the construction playbook to work from. I think it's super important in keeping the competitive advantage of UK PLC, to use that hard-worn phrase. And I think finally we need to decide who will be the guardian of all the data. Interestingly, we've created a national data guardian for healthcare. I think we possibly need one of those for the built environment. And we need to make sure that open data is used for the public good. All these things are in the report, and I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and I'm really pleased to see what's come out of it.
Which is some really key points there, I think, from my perspective as well, things I've been thinking about. Keith, we can turn to you. I'm going to tell you to try and speed us back up again, get us back on track, I guess, which is never something I ask you to do normally, Keith, but see how you go.
You're destined to fail, Ron. Thanks, Ron, and to the two, Rich, particularly to Chelsea and Will for leading this work. And I think perhaps I'd like to echo the points made by the previous speakers. Now, when I first read the draft of this a couple of months ago, I was particularly struck by the analysis that set out evidence, not just of the direct benefits to businesses investing in IM and to the projects and programs that they're delivering, but also those indirect benefits, how IM could support those broader social and environmental outcomes, something that the Hub's value toolkit is very much focused on. And of course, the multiplier effect, delivering benefits to the wider economy, not just constrained within our sector. So there's something in this report for everyone, for policymakers, for clients, for businesses, for users, and for society at large. But the report does raise some challenges. For example, how on average, and with some notable exceptions, SMEs are much less likely to be investing in technology adaptation than larger organisations, and are overall around 20% less productive, which is a crucial factor in a sector of our size with such a long tail. So it seems really, as far as IM goes, size still matters. So if we're to realise the full benefits that are set out in this report, and we surely must, then government and industry must ensure that the opportunities are not just felt by those large multinational organisations, but by all parts of the sector. So there's a key role for government to champion investment in IM. It has history from the 2011 BIM mandate, and particularly thinking about how construction and infrastructure will be driving our post-COVID recovery plans. Government's got ambitious plans for investment in construction infrastructure, and it's shortly going to be publishing its national infrastructure and construction pipeline, and later this year will set out its spending plans. So this is a moment of opportunity. So government will always be our sector's largest clients. So it's crucial that, as well as being the largest, they also act as our leading client, setting the strategic direction for our sector. It's a complex policy environment, but there's real opportunity with both the ambition of the construction playbook and the forthcoming iteration of TIP to push this agenda harder and faster. But industry can't just be passive. It must also really play its part, working with clients, departments, policymakers to speed adoption. And as Richard Threlfall says, getting it right here will open up global markets for UK businesses. So this report really sets out the case for IM clearly and with evidence, crucial, as Richard Robinson said. And our challenge is to make sure we build on this analysis to drive real transformation, not just in the direct benefits described in the report, but those crucial indirect areas, social value, carbon, the wider GDP, that a sector of our size can really unlock. So I wholeheartedly welcome this report. Its publication isn't job finished, it's job started. Thanks, Rob.
Excellent, Keith. Thank you very much. Alexandra, let's turn to you now, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Ron. I was really excited to read this report. When I first stepped into CDBB, one of the questions that I was asked constantly was, why should I use information? Why should I use BIM? What's in it for me? How do I explain this to my C-suite? We need to be able to answer those questions if we're going to be able to build the capacity in both the public and private sector to use information management. And this report does that. So huge thank you to Chelsea and Will and the team. you would think that information management, so having the right data at the right time in the right hands, and that information is right, it feels like a no-brainer. And to date, we've had qualitative evidence, the pandemic being a classic. You can just look around at enterprises in construction and outside, and those who've done well out of the last few years, those who've managed to hold their own and to pivot quickly, have been those who've embraced digital transformation. And we've had the previous PwC work, which provided the foundation, but this evidence-based with real case studies makes that point. It allows us to answer that question: what's in it for me? Why do I use information management? And how do I explain it to my C-suite? So really excited to see this. Also, there's the extra work around the vision for the built environment, which some of you may have read recently, talking about how do we use our infrastructure for a better future for people and the planet. Those intangibles that Chelsea started to talk about, where we can quantify them, but they're also the unquantifiable bits of the social benefit, bits of the environmental benefit that are also gained when we use information management. And beyond that, when we go into digital transformation, or as I would probably call it, the cyber physical fabric, when we're looking at AI and machine learning, and we're looking at robotics, how they all fit in. And it's worth noting that this report doesn't project into future technologies or really outside the construction sector. And we know that that is additional value that we're getting from information management. So for example, connected ecosystems of digital twins will expand the ratios that we get. I'm really excited to see for the next phase of this report in 2, 3, 4 years' time, when we bring in those technologies, just how much benefit we will be getting out of our information management in the future. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. And last but by no means least, Noble, please.
Thank you very much. And as all the other speakers have said, thanks to Chelsea and to Will for the report, which is a fascinating report. Each time I get an invite to a committee, a group, a work stream, a new publication, and this industry is full of them, constantly being churned out, I generally say no, but this is one of the few that I've actually said yes to, because I think it is a seminal report, as Richard highlighted earlier, and I think there are some vital points to this that could change things massively for the future. There's a tremendous opportunity here, not just the scale of what needs to be done in terms of construction through net zero and levelling up, as speakers have mentioned earlier, but also building 300,000 homes a year, £600 billion infrastructure pipeline, and not just the quantity of what needs to be done, but the quality as well. And if we're going to achieve this, we're not going to be able to do it in the same way as we've done before, because the scale is so great. What the report clearly highlights are the benefits of embedding technological, cultural, information management, these structural shifts that we're going to need to make, what the benefits of those are. And it's going to be particularly vital for the supply chain, as Keith mentioned briefly, which, if you look at construction as an industry, the main contractors and main house builders aren't the majority of the industry. 86% of employment within construction is the SMEs. And if we're going to get information management throughout the supply chain embedded, we're going to have to get it through to the SMEs, who are the ones that have the least finance available and the ones who find it difficult to adopt technology en masse. Now, I come from a part of the industry, which is construction product manufacturers, who already use information management quite considerably. It tends to be easier for them because they're a relatively few number of firms within a product sector. They're making a generic product. But for them, information management is absolutely vital, and it's justifiable. They're making very large upfront investments of £100 million or more for a long-term rate of return. So they need to know that that is justifiable. They need to know what the rate of return is, both on the initial cost, the operational cost, the improvements in efficiency, the reductions in defects, etc. And all these are sorts of issues that are highlighted in the report that need to become embedded within the whole construction supply chain. The report also has some excellent facets that tend to be missed out in most of these reports, committees, work streams that I'm invited to be a part of. It doesn't just focus on productivity, it highlights the benefits in terms of reductions in risk, in terms of increases in quality, improved health and safety and reputation within the industry. And it also highlights benefits to social value. So from my perspective, it's an absolutely vital report. And I think it does have the power to change things for the better and incentivize major investments in all the key areas, whether it's off-site, whether it's technology in terms of digitalization, but also within cultural change. Thanks.